All right, I'm going to hit record.
Oh. You don't podcast enough, you might forget to hit that button.
Yeah. All right. It's Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are reviewing the 1997 classic, Princess Mononoke. So, I bought an iPhone 16 today because it might be trouble getting phones in the future, and my 13's getting a little old.
Yeah.
I'm
just gonna. I considered, but you know what? It's like, yeah, I'll just stay with my iPhone 12 mini because it's mini as long as it works. And you know what? If it breaks, I'll buy. I can go on and find a used or perhaps new that was never opened iPhone 12 or 13 mini. If you know that is functional.
Well, part of what
if iOS no longer supports that phone, then I will buy a new phone.
But the other reason I got it is I do have to, as long as Europe will let me in, I still have to try and plan a bunch of trips. So I am bringing a burner phone with me anytime I leave the country. So
yeah, that's not a bad strategy. But I think my strategy would be to just not bring the phone and just when you get there, get one. And then
what do you mean?
Leave it there.
Get one. That's really expensive.
You don't have to buy a brand new one. You could just get like a crappy old busted one from like, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, used crappy phone store, whatever. Just something that works.
That's not super great for like going somewhere just for a week and then coming home, or just 3 days and then coming home.
Hey, if you're there that briefly, I could just go without the phone entirely,
Yeah, but it's also it'll be useful to have a backup phone for those situations because I am the kind of person, one, I'm a loudmouth on the internet, and two, I do travel internationally quite a bit for work. I also, though,
the other thing is like, you could maybe, if you knew someone on the other end, right? You could just if they're going to a place frequently, or if it's an office.
Oh, I got a guy who mails me things anytime he's going to be in the U.S. just because that way he doesn't have to put it in his luggage.
Right. Things like, we've done things like we have employees in other countries, or when they come to the U.S., they buy MacBooks and then they go back. Because they don't have an Apple store where they are, right? Like guy who lives on the island in Thailand. It's like, that guy. There's no Apple store for that guy.
Yeah.
You need a ferry to get to where he lives. But yeah, it's like if you have some way to store goods in the other place, you could be like, go there, buy a phone, leave it in like a locker.
Nope.
Right. And then, or airport lockers like in old crime movies.
Hey, at my old job, I used to leave stuff in Hyderabad in the office just so I didn't have to lug it to India like 4 or 5 times a year.
It's like if I was going to another country frequently, even when times were less dark, I would just like, I have a that country phone and a this country phone, and I just leave each phone where it is. And you know what? If law enforcement or whoever in the other country goes and finds that phone where it is and takes it, it's like, all right.
Yep. I also have some faith in Apple's encryption, so I'm not too worried about walking away from a phone.
If you're in the UK, though, they disabled that shit.
Yeah. But I did do one other thing because for those of you who are unaware, I own 2 cameras that matter today, not counting my phone. I have an old GX1 Micro Four Thirds, which was a great camera at the time. It's still a pretty good camera, but
it's not better than the camera in your brand new iPhone 16.
Nope. The only benefit of that camera is the good lenses I can put on it. That camera can't even it can't even output HDMI of what it's looking at.
It could. You just need a special cable.
No, I looked into that. You cannot. The HDMI output on the GX1 can only play video it is recorded. It cannot do a live view of what it's looking at. There's no firmware hack to do that with the GX1 specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, believe me. And I have my camcorder, which is still pretty great for what I would use it for. But one, it's annoying to carry around, and two, what it's actually not great for is recording a panel at a convention that doesn't have spotlights because the sensor is pretty small.
Yeah, that is the thing. With camcorders tend to, they're focusing on, frame rates, the zoomy lens, and all the other features that are,
like 2 built-in XLRs. You have to buy a weird expensive thing to stick on your camera, like that kind of thing. But
I mean, there are reasons that you see when you go out, you see less camcorders these days and way more regular old DSLR shaped or mirrorless cameras being used for video because the camcorder has a, much more narrower use case.
Yeah. Like where I will use the camcorder now is basically backup camera at like a convention where we're doing a bigger talk, or like anytime I want to do any sort of like walking around journalism, like which might be more important.
Yeah. Well, I think, the shape of the camcorder specifically, right? Because if don't have a tripod, but you were going to get you're going to stand there and aim at a news person, but you're also going to walk around.
Yeah.
If you use the smaller mirrorless DSLR style camera, you need to get some sort of, gimbal balancy thing going on.
But the camcorder, I can just hold it on my shoulder and
put it on your shoulder.
And it's got like a lot of stabilization options in it because it's so big and that frame has a bunch of shit inside of it.
I mean, newer cameras have, in-body stabilization.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure the in-body stabilization of the lens I got for my new camera is better than what I got in the lens of that old camcorder. That camcorder is also pretty old at this point. I've had that for a long time. But, so I finally bought a new camera. I did get a GH7. Because I think I want a camera to take photos again, like a good one, but separately, it's
okay at photos.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about getting a full frame.
Not bad at photos.
Yeah. But I thought about getting a full frame, but I was still doing fine with the GX1. So this is just better. And so it'll be plenty fine for what I'm doing. But my main use case is video, like at conventions or doing videos in the house. And it's a good format for that. And the reason I got the GH7 over that other one, the other similar camera that they have is that this one has the little active cooling. And people have said that the other one, if you do video for more than like an hour or so, can overheat.
It depends on which settings you're using on the video.
Well, the one use case, someone was like, I was recording 120 FPS, and after 45 minutes, my camera overheated at 100 degree day outside. It's like, okay.
Yeah. The only thing with the cooling, the fan in the camera is it could make noise that could interfere with your video, maybe, depending. So, depends. Yep,
and I got that the lens you recommended, that Leica 12 to 35 millimeter. That just seems like the most versatile.
I have basically micro four thirds lenses of every shape and size imaginable. I can every length from like the wide fisheye out to the the big crazy zoom, and that lens is used more than all other lenses combined.
Yep, that was the selling point. As you saying that, it was like, well, that's obviously the lens I'm getting.
It's like if I was forced to throw away lenses, that would no question would be the last one I throw away.
Because I got my like 200 millimeter whatever telephoto lens if I really need it, and I got that pancake lens if it's really dark. So yeah, I bought a head on everything I could buy a head on, and we'll see what happens. Because in the news, if you're not aware, global trade is like fucked right now. Like this is historic, unprecedented nonsense that is happening in the world. I don't think an economic situation quite like this has ever happened. And I say that in my, not the opinion of my employer, but my personal professional opinion working in capital markets for 18 years. I've never seen shit like this, nor has anyone I've worked with.
Well, I mean, you weren't alive for Smoot Hawley.
Yeah, but we're reaching back to Civil War era nonsense at this point. But even back then, that was an era where there was a lot less global trade than there is today. So basically, the broad news, because we can't ignore it, if you live anywhere in the world, this doesn't just impact Americans, there is a chance that trade around the world is going to dry up, slow down. Things might become unavailable in different countries. Prices on some things are going to become extremely volatile. And the stock market's going to just go absolutely fucking insane. And I got no advice for you other than make sure you got cash hanging around. And if there's anything you need, buy it sooner rather than later. And I guess if you live in the U.S., vote for Democrats. If voting even matters at this point. So, yeah, keep an eye on that. This is crazy, unprecedented, dangerous, world destabilizing things. It's past the point that it could be fixed anytime soon. Let's say somehow by next year in the U.S. elections, Democrats completely take the House and then completely take the Senate, win the presidency, supermajority, filibusters are gone, radical reforms inside the U.S. I don't think Europe would come back around to what it was like before. Imagine
if every Republican resigned today, and
Yeah.
I was the president.
Yeah, President
right?
Scott.
President Scott, and I call up like the European leaders,
Yep.
and I'd be like, hey, we got rid of the shitty guy. I'm like awesome. You know that I'm awesome, right? And that we're totally chill, and I love you guys. It's like they'd be like, yeah, but you could just be gone again in like 3 years and back to shittiness, or
Yep.
right?
America's
It's
like
I call
a
up China.
giant.
I call up China, and I'd be like, look, I don't like your human rights action, but I'm not like that other guy, right? He's like, I'm like, let's work something out.
Yep. But the U.S. is still like one bad election from going absolutely crazy. I like to analogize the U.S. Imagine you live in like a fantasy world, and on the other side of the mountain, there's a giant. And sometimes the giant's in a good mood, and like he'll talk to you, he'll give you stuff. When a dragon comes, he'll like help you out. But every now and then, he starts screaming and punching himself in his own dick, and occasionally just starts throwing rocks at you. That's basically what the U.S. has been to the rest of the world for the entirety of its existence. And we're only getting bigger and bigger. Like the giant's getting bigger.
What's your relationship with the giant gonna be? It's like,
yeah,
even though he saved you from the dragon that one time, it's like, do you want to invite him over for a party?
Yeah. So just be prepared for extremely unprecedented and unpredictable times is the best I can say, because this is way beyond anything I can make a deeper opinion on in terms of capital markets.
Yep. I mean, no matter what happens,
survive.
Right? I'm continuing. Well, yeah, but
that's the most important thing to do.
Financially, I'm continuing with my previous strategy, which is just bet on society functioning. If society ceases to function, then it doesn't matter how much money I have. And if society does cease to function, then I made a winning bet and I have money.
I will admit, this is not investment advice. I am not a registered investment advisor. However, shortly after that fucking guy became president, I did move most of my investments into cash. And as a result, that effectively made me a lot of money because it didn't drop on me.
Yeah, but there was a great article that I read that was like, what if you were the stupidest investor of all time in terms of timing, but all you did was buy index funds, right? So this is just some article from some guy, right? But the math is correct, right? Let's say you were only buying index funds. You never sold. You never do anything except buy index funds. And you bought them at the worst possible times. Like you bought them right before every stock market crash.
Yeah.
Like, you bought them like in 2008 and the
day
market
before Black Monday, you're just like, you know what? I should invest my life savings in the stock market right now. It's only going up from here.
Right. Somebody who did that from like, the 70s through today, just always buying index funds at the worst time. But that's all they did was buy index funds. They would still be ahead a lot, right? Because that's just the stock market go up.
All I will say, and again, this is not investment advice. I'm not a registered investment advisor. The stock market going up forever over time is a very short span of human economic history. So
Indeed.
It is arguably a lot of that is just a fluke of the fact that the U.S. moved to things like 401ks instead of pensions, and maybe unsustainable to the point that markets cease to function as we know them at some point.
If markets cease to function, then I refer to my previous statement about society, right?
Have you invested in water and filters? If
they got rid of 401ks, right? Well, obviously my 401k, since they're getting rid of it, would stop buying more stocks automatically because it's no longer allowed. But also, I would be like, whoa, because basically the way 401ks are sorted, at least, I don't know if this is true, but it's just one of those things that feels true and makes sense, is that it feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy where everyone who has money and is saving for retirement is using these 401ks, at least in the US. And a 401k can only really buy stocks. You can't short sell for sure.
Yeah.
You can reallocate, but you can't have cash. You can do the money market fund, I guess, but that's still allocated technically. And then you only sell when you're old. But even when you're old, unless it's like a Roth IRA, you have this incentive to sell slowly because you don't want to have a big tax burden, and you also want to make it last because you hope you're going to not die quickly.
I'll go way further. My personal opinion is that 401ks were a long con to force the stock market to go up forever.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is that the 401ks, you have this whole field of people who are automatically buying stocks all the time, no matter what the situation is. There are people, who just their payday just happened to be like a few days ago, and so therefore they automatically bought stocks that day, even though that was a bad idea.
Yep.
Right. And it just happens. And so if there's just this big pile of money always buying stocks, then of course prices are just always going to go up regardless of what the situation is, right? Or whether companies are doing well or doing poorly. Just the value of stocks will keep going up just because there's this pile of money always buying, right?
But of course, the thing that definitely is fine and exists in the universe and never causes a problem is a number that goes up forever and can never come down.
Indeed. But that's when the number comes down is when more people are retiring and there are less people making enough money to have 401ks.
So
that's when it goes down. And so you just want to, that's what you got to get ahead.
So along those lines, I actually have a very important warning for all of you. And again, not investment advice, not an RIA, but if the following situation occurred in Minecraft, and that situation is this idiot administration, they are talking about doing something to allow 401ks and things like them to basically invest in what they're going to call private equity. Non-standard assets.
I heard about that. No.
If such a thing were to occur in Minecraft, do not fucking let any investment you have in Minecraft do that thing, because private equity means investing in things that cannot be easily and systematically evaluated. Instead of investing in a thing where there's a bunch of numbers behind it and theoretically like real estate or a company or something, you're investing in things where the value is kind of arbitrary and might be made up. Like, how valuable is this warehouse full of paintings plus these 4 luxury cars plus like a 5% interest in the GeekNights podcast? Like, that's the kind of shit they mean when they say private equity. Don't think the private equity that would appear in a Minecraft 401k is going to be the kind of private equity that actual rich people invest in.
Yeah, it's like, you see like stories like private equity buys Toys R Us, then loots it and runs it into the ground. And you're like, well, it sucks for Toys R Us, but those people who looted it, didn't they make out? Right? And so then you think, oh, well, if I could invest in private equity, wouldn't I be a looter? And wouldn't therefore I make out? The answer is no. Do not do that.
If the crime family is already successful, they don't need you. So if they're really soliciting you to join the crime family, you're probably the mark. All right. And some other news. You got any news?
Yeah, there's some news going on. So the first news is that, we did book club on Murderbot Diaries.
Oh, yeah.
And today, of all places, my company's Slack server in like one of the, the rec channels, someone was like, just post this trailer and it says Murderbot. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know there was a Murderbot movie, TV show. What is this?
Emily and I were mad about the fact that it wasn't animated for a long time in our own Discord.
I didn't even know it existed. So then I'm like, it says Murderbot. And I'm like, wait, I know what that is. I click on it and it is the Murderbot. Indeed. Yep. It's not some other Murderbot. It's the Murderbot. And it's an Apple TV series. And I don't think I've watched any Apple TV series, but they have been, to their credit, making some sci-fi ones, which is a nerd has to approve, right? Of at least, the Foundation, which I didn't watch. Yeah. And there's at least another one I didn't watch. I forget. I don't know. But anyway, the trailer looks fun, and it looks mostly true to Murderbot with, a little more comedic leanings, but, Murderbot is also comedy, so it's just, whatever. But yeah, that's it's coming real soon. Actually, was it May something?
Yeah, and the trailer was uploaded 6 hours ago. So
yeah.
Well, I think
the coworker posted it like when it was up for like 20 minutes. They're like a mega Murderbot fan. Yeah. This coworker.
And as a reader of the Murderbot books, they are some of my favorite like light sci-fi books that I've read.
It's light and fun, and so the show also looks light and fun. And So, hey.
While I think this series would have been much better served for a lot of reasons I don't want to get into by being animated, and I'm a little disappointed that Murderbot is a hot white guy, a traditionally hot white guy.
Yeah.
They could have done so much more with this. But two things stood out that were very positive. One, Sanctuary Moon looks exactly the way it should look.
I want to watch Sanctuary Moon more than I want to watch Murderbot.
I feel like Sanctuary Moon might just be like Gundam Seed.
Well, it's an old anime trope to have the show within the show.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or even, it's like an Itchy and Scratchy, all right?
Or the Bounty Hunter show in Cowboy Bebop.
Yep.
But two, the scientists, based on the little bit of dialogue that we get from them in the trailer, they are exactly how I imagined them as I was reading the books. They look like how I imagine them. They talk like how I imagine them. So I think this will be good, even if it's not what I wanted, which is an animated thing.
In other news, on my shelf over there behind me, you should be able to see 2 Gundams, and behind those Gundams are every single volume of Gundam the Origin, the manga, which, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people, this manga by Yasuhiko Yoshikazu, if you don't know, that is the person who was like the character designer for the original TV show. But they made this manga all by themselves, I presume with a bunch of assistants as well. But in terms of the original Gundam story, the Universal Century Amuro Char Gundam story, that original Gundam story, it's been adapted many times, right? You've got the original novels by Yoshiyuki Tomino, which is the first, version, right? There may be a manga version that I've never seen. I assume there must be. There's the original TV series. There's the compilation movies of the original TV series. There's the Gundam the Origin anime, which is like an anime adaptation of this manga. But this, in my opinion, of all the different adaptations of that story, this is the one. Even though it was like the third one and it was by a different guy than the original one. This is actually better. This is the best one by far. And if you didn't buy all these volumes that are on the shelf behind me when you had the chance, well, good news. Kodansha USA announced they are going to publish it again in a deluxe fancy edition that's hardcover with faux leather, and it's going to be 7.5 inches by 10 inches. So I think that's bigger than the ones I have. And so, yeah, if maybe you can find these volumes that I have, or you can go get these new ones that are going to come out, I guess in August ish in the US at least. But yeah, if you want to experience the original Gundam story and you have never done so, this is the way. Choose this manga. And if you're a Mega Gundam fan who loves that story, well, you should also choose this manga.
Yeah. I feel like Gundam's a little bit on the upswing again, because when I was at Zenkai-Con, while there is a lot of Has-Been Hotel and a lot of Dungeon Meshi, like those are the two single biggest things I saw, the two other things that stood out a lot was a shit ton of people carrying around boxes with Gundam models, like way more people than you would expect at a small con like that. And
Gundam models have been going on the up for quite a while.
Yeah, I feel like they're still going on the up. And inexplicably, a bunch of Trigun.
Well, there wasn't
lots of Trigun
a newer
cosplayers.
show, or there was one? Or...
There is a newer one. I watched the first episode. It's actually really good, and it reeks a little bit of the Evangelion reboot. In some other news, it's funny that this is news. The important part of this news is the date. That date is June 4th, 2027. But what the news is 4 still images that were officially released that are purportedly from the trailer of the third Spider-Verse movie. So this news article...
which was supposed to be out already. But...
Yeah, this news article is not worth reading because it's just going to have paragraphs speculating on 4 still images. However... the movie is going to come out on June 4th, 2027. We have a date. So that means the first movie came out in 2018. The second movie came out in 2023. And the final movie is going to come out in 2027. This is approaching the first arc of giant robo territory in terms of how long it took to see this many frames of animation. But I'm already pumped, and I'm going to probably keep forgetting about that date because that is a long goddamn time from now.
Yeah. If anyone out there can remember any other time where a movie or a TV show or something ended, or the end of a book, and it promised in the previous, like at the end, like the specific date for the next installment, and that date was like way off, like we already know, for example, that like Game of Thrones, like that book's never coming.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't read any.
And a lot
of
of
them,
things had an implied sequel that just never came. That's
right.
a
But I don't
situation.
think at the end, if you go to the end, the last page of the first printing of the final Game of Thrones book, it doesn't say next book like August something. I don't.
George R. Martin will give you another book 2 years hence.
Yeah, maybe it does. I've never read it.
I don't think it does.
I assume it doesn't, right? And so, but if you know of other cases, because at the end of the second Spider-Verse movie in the theater, when I saw it on opening weekend, it said next, I forgot, I have the date in a calendar, but I forget what it is right now. It said the next movie is this date. Boom. And that was like, was it soon or...
The closest,
it's not happening.
The closest situation I know of is actually, it's a video game, but so Quest for Glory 2, Trial by Fire. At the end of that game, it had a trailer in it for the next game called Quest for Glory 3, Shadows of Darkness. Then, years later, a game came out called Quest for Glory 3, Wages of War. That was not that game. And then years and years after that, they released Quest for Glory 4, Shadows of Darkness. They just inserted a whole ass game between...
All right, but I'm looking for ones with a specific date.
Yeah, they didn't. They did really not give dates.
Yeah.
And last little geek bite, we're nearing the end of season 1 of Common Side Effects. It looks like there will be a sequel.
Oh
to
yeah, I
this
forgot
show.
about that one.
So the first episode is just free on YouTube, like legit to just watch, no ads, nothing. So that's an easy way to try this show out. I'll link to it. But now that we're getting near the end, this is one of the best short drama comedies I've seen in a long time, animated or not. This show is real fucking good. I strongly recommend watching it, partly because it's short, and in terms of what is good about it, it is dense.
While we're talking about Geek Bites, a lot of people have hyped up this anime called Apothecary Diaries. I think it's based on a light novel, as many animes are. And I think it even has a second season. Ooh. But I think the first season just appeared on Netflix. So I watched one episode. And let me tell you, so much stuff happened in that one episode.
Are we talking like it was the third to last episode of Escaflowne level of stuff happening?
Like, there's like 5 episodes worth of stuff going down in the first episode of this show. You should watch the first episode of Apothecary Diaries on Netflix. It is a fast-paced show.
All right, you know what? I will, and you should at least watch just the first episode of Common Side Effects, because I'm really curious to see what you think about it. There's a lot going on in this show, and it's about things that are very relevant. And but I'm really enjoying it way more than I expected I would, and for reasons I didn't expect I would enjoy it. All right. Anyway, things of the day. So, I'm curious, Scott, do you know why the summit of the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt is missing? Like, why it's like a flat top up there?
Well, yeah, Napoleon put it in a cannon and used it to shoot off the Sphinx nose. He was trying to pick the Sphinx nose, get that booger off there. And
I heard it bounced off of the Sphinx, and it landed in the sea off of Britain, and that's what killed Admiral Horatio Nelson.
Is it my more reasonable guess, right, is we know that at least according to what people have said, is that the pyramids were originally covered with like marble, right?
Yep, the facing stones.
Right, and the pictures that I've seen, the renderings I've seen, right, right, that the top was like a golden triangle.
He gets into that. That is apparently there is no evidence of that, and even if there was a golden triangle at the top, because of how bright it would have been with the casing stones, no human could ever see it. There would have been no point.
And also, how would you lift the heavy-ass golden shit up? And it could have been gold foil, But...
Well, I mean, how would you... I mean, the ancient question, how the fuck did you even lift the bricks to make the pyramid in the first place is already
we know how they did that, but I'm just saying
we have a good guess.
Gold is heavier than rocks. Gold is really heavy.
Okay, so this video is 21 minutes and 37 seconds long.
Is the answer just that they never finished it? It was always flat on top?
The answer is really not what I expected. And this guy fucking did the research. This video is in depth to the point that we know the year it happened specifically. We can even narrow it down.
It's just on the ground or something? Or
we could even narrow it down to like the month. This video gets into detail I did not expect. All the different times between the year 1480 and the year 1798 when different people measured the height of the pyramid. And the end conclusion is we know who did it, how, and why, and what year, and even what month. And the entire video is worth a watch. This thing was oddly captivating. I recommend watching this entire video. Don't just skip to the end. You will never ever guess what happened to the top of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Someone was trying to get in. They thought that was the entrance.
There is no universe where you will guess. You will
They
never.
needed some rocks for something, and those are the available rocks.
Every one of the theories you have raised, this guy systematically is like, well, what about this obvious idea? Well, here's proof that is not what happened.
Okay.
It's pretty good. And
someone wanted to take it and put it in the museum.
It's worth watching, and you'll see. I'm not going to spoil it. Anyway, what do you got?
A literal Egyptian god was pissed and came down and was like, "Fucking."
You know, that's actually what I would hope for, because I feel like we could use a big, powerful Egyptian god to deal with some situations right now. At this point, I might go ask the giant for help if he existed.
Maybe. All right, thing of the day. So everyone's got their little games. Oh, some people have little games they play every day. You know, New York Times games like your Wordles and your spelling bees, or maybe you're playing a little some sort of phone game like a Marvel Snap, which I don't play anymore, or a little tower defense. A little matching game, something you do every day, right? So there's this game on the Atlantic, which is basically trying to compete with New York Times in the gaming department, and it's called Bracket City. And basically, it's sort of like a crossword puzzle in which there's clues and you type in the answer to the clue, right? And when you answer clues and look at other clues, they feed into each other the same way that a crossword puzzle does. And so that's right, interesting. But it doesn't work in the same way a crossword puzzle in the way they interact. What it is they give you this big old blob of text, and some of the text is in brackets, and each set of brackets, they're embedded in each other, layered. Each has a clue, and you have to solve the inner clues first and work your way to the outer clues. And as you do so, the text is getting smaller because this big old sentence, you've just turned it into a word. And now that word is part of another clue, which is part of another clue. And the big blob of text gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And when you finished it all, you have a couple sentences that are telling you of a thing that happened on that day, on this day in history. And so you can use your knowledge. Like if you know what happened today in history, you know the answer, like I did for the one today. And you can sort of use that knowledge to figure it out, but you have to start with the inner clues. You can't, just start with the outer clues and type the answer in, like Wheel of Fortune or some shit. So
I'm surprised you knew
game.
that the distinguished soldier Septimus Severus was proclaimed emperor of the army in Illyricum on this day.
Was that different? No, the one that I knew was Ulysses S. Grant.
Byzantine Emperor Basilius issued a circular letter to the bishops of the empire supporting the monophysite Christological position.
Maybe that's not the one. I don't know. Maybe the wrong day.
I'm just looking at the Wikipedia of all the things that happen on this day.
Oh, I'm like the actual puzzle.
I do think
was...
while there are things like that I would know, I would not fucking remember that this was the day the emperor sent the letter about monophysitism. I only know that letter exists. I didn't know it was April 9th.
No, today's one was about Ulysses S. Grant.
All right, in the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, which I have just started reading, Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. I picked it because it was portrayed to me as, imagine a post-apocalypse where the good guys kind of won, and we've done an okay job of rebuilding things. Otherwise, we will be at PAX East 2025 on Friday, 10:30 a.m., The Everlasting Game. On Sunday, 11 a.m., Game Mechanics in Tabletop Design. Otherwise, playing games and hanging out in Boston. It should be a good time. We hope to see you there.
Any other meta moments? I don't think so.
Yeah, not until, I guess, PAX Unplugged and PAX West will come up before we know it. And Bagfest in the future. All right, let's get into it.
As we do every year.
I can't believe we never talked about this anime. We did a show a long time ago called The Works of Miyazaki, where we just kind of talked about all the Miyazaki.
We've done a few shows on Miyazaki on specific ones, and we did an episode on all of them. But that leaves many that do not have their own episode, which is ripe fruit.
Yeah, criminal even, because I love these movies. But it just so happens that just recently, Princess Mononoke, Mononoke Hime, if you were paying attention, you were able to see it remastered in 4K, in digital screenings and IMAX theaters all around the country. Scott went to see it in that fashion. I went to see it in that fashion. And yeah, this movie still looks like $1 million in the year 2025.
Right. So the movie, the remaster, just briefly, right? So it was IMAX only. They weren't showing it in non-IMAX. So I had to go all the way to Manhattan. And I went to all the film nerds in New York City. They rave about this one specific IMAX at the AMC Lincoln 13, which is across from the Opera House, right? And I had never been to that specific theater.
I don't think I've ever been to that theater either.
And so I actually realized once I got there that I hadn't been in an IMAX theater in a very, like a real IMAX. I've been to like RPX, like the fake IMAX.
Yeah.
Right? And I haven't been to IMAX in a long time, like not since maybe Tron Legacy or something. It's a long time. And meanwhile, a new Tron is coming. That's how long it's been. And so I can't really compare this IMAX to any other current IMAXs. But comparing it to other IMAXs I've been to, the film nerds are fighting to go to this one theater. And I kind of see why they were fighting to go to that one theater, right? Would I fight to go to that theater for like a big screening? No. But given the option, right, to go to that theater, it's like, yes, it was noticeably, not like a huge amount, not, an order of magnitude superior, but like 1 or 2 steps above, in a significantly noticeable way, superior to other movie theaters I have been to, perhaps any movie theater I've ever been to. It's like the room is like a different kind of place. The way the seats are arranged, it feels a little bit kind of like a spaceship. It's sort of separate from the rest of the movie theater. Like it's got its separate escalator, a separate ticket taker, a separate concession stand. It's like this, So yeah, those, it's not something to fight over like those film nerds are, but for future screenings of this nature, I may choose to go there if I don't have to fight.
Makes sense. I mean, remember when we saw Hateful Eight in the full 70-millimeter theater? Like, that was absolutely worth it.
Yeah, but that was a 70-millimeter projector, but that theater was not on, the level.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, so this is a movie. We'll save spoilers for the end. Like, I do want to do a little bit of a final thoughts because there are some things to talk about.
How could this movie is from the last millennium? What do you mean spoilers? Come on, people.
There's got to be GeekNights listeners who have never actually watched this movie for some reason.
We don't need to do this.
Is old.
This show is not to tell people to see the movie that they obviously know they already should have seen without this episode existing, right? And they should feel shameful, in fact, if they haven't seen it yet and they are living in a good enough standing in society that they are able to see movies.
But I would say
anyone else, you have an excuse.
I think this is my favorite like Miyazaki movie.
So I mean,
it's hard to rank them. If I'm forced,
right,
this is definitely S tier in the level of Miyazaki's.
If you force me to rank them, I'm probably gonna say like Spirited Away 1.
Spirited Away is the only one I can think of that's like a super contender for me.
If you forced me, but it's like, okay, then if you challenge me and say, well, what's the difference between the two that makes you rank the other one and this one 2? I'd be like, that's like asking me like, you gave one of them a 10 and you gave the other one a 9.99999. It's like, what is that sliver? It's like, I don't fucking know what the difference is. I can't tell you what the difference is. It's only because you forced me to rank them.
But like Mononoke Hime is important for a lot of reasons, because it was released without the support it needed, but released nonetheless in the United States in an era when anime was still not that well known, not like today.
Yep, I have a story about this specifically, right? In the summer of the year 2000, right, in between high school and college, I went to the country of Israel, where I'm probably not going to go anytime soon. Haven't been there since. I only went there once. And one of the people on that trip, right, told me about this movie, Princess Mononoke, which I all I understood from, I didn't know who Miyazaki was, right? I had watched animes. I'd seen Akira's and Vampire Hunter D's and Galaxy Expresses and all kinds of animes. I was an anime fan, right? But I only seen what I had access to at the time, right? Which wasn't that much. And it tells me about this movie. It's an anime movie. I don't know anything else about it other than that I tried to remember the name of it, and I remembered that when I get home, I should try to see it. I didn't know anything else. And while we were there, in, the nation of Israel, we walked past a movie theater, and the poster for the movie was outside the theater. And the dude is like, that's the movie that I was telling you about, that poster. I assume it was screening in there with, Hebrew subtitles. We didn't go in and watch it. We didn't have time for that. We're on a trip, we got a schedule and stuff. But that was the first time I ever heard of this movie, any Miyazaki movie ever. And when I got back to the U.S., yeah, of course, I tried to watch it as quick.
I think I've seen it.
As soon as I could find it, I watched it.
I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times, partly because once I was able to get a copy of it on a DVD, which was relatively new technology at the time, I remember showing it to every wing of my family, one by one. I showed it to a bunch of people I'd known from high school when I was back in town and they were still around. I was basically introducing people to anime by showing them this movie over and over and over again. And also, this movie is absolutely fantastic, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, so watching it again just recently, it holds up 100%. This movie's fantastic.
Oh, yeah,
it filled me with the same feelings, the same, it's such an epic. The animation is great. The characters are great. San is a fucking champion. It's so quotable. The score is amazing. It's a Joe Hisaishi. I have no complaints about this movie other than that.
What are you going to criticize in this movie?
Yeah.
The only thing, it's I want to try, if you, all right, how am I supposed to criticize something? The deer god's face looks funny.
Yeah. Which, it looks that way for very intentional reasons.
Obviously. I guess, it's not necessarily a criticism, but at the end of the movie, spoilers,
yeah.
The deer god's motivation. He's just mad that his head got stolen, right? But prior to that part, his motivations are sort of mysterious and unsure.
They're very much a metaphor for the environment and nature in that region.
Yes.
In a world where humans are modernizing, the world is changing. The deer god is a way of being that is not going to survive the coming era.
Yeah, but I guess there's sort of this implication that you would expect the deer god would just be on the animal side, right? He'd be just the leader of Team.
Well, what's the line?
Wolf and Boar.
They went to the
deer god is not the leader of Team Wolf and Boar.
They went to the deer god seeking life, and they were given death.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all the animals, they know going to the deer god is the deer god is a force of nature. The deer god is not on anyone's side. It's the state of the forest itself.
Yeah, so it's not like a criticism of the film. It's just the only part about the film that's kind of a little weird.
Well, it's funny because as a kid, and even now, not for nothing, I would rather the humans have lost that battle.
Well, that's the thing is if you look at it more zoomed out, right?
The Emperor is the true villain. The Emperor is the problem.
Obviously, yes, the Emperor is the villain. But, the people living in the ironworks, right? It's you zoom out and you get a Fern Gully situation, and you're yeah, the evil ironworks is destroying all the forest, right? And it's yes. But that's actually the best thing about this movie, at least plot-wise and character-wise, is how they're other than the emperor, who you never really see, nobody's clearly good or bad.
Yeah, it's
right?
a hierarchy of oppression and externalities, very similar to what you see in a more recent movie, Wolfwalkers, where you have the English colonists who are oppressors. They are oppressing the native Irish people, but yet the Irish people who are there are portrayed as themselves having displaced and oppressed a previous culture. So they're in the middle of a sandwich of oppression, just like here. The evils and problems of the empire oppress people. Then some of those people are forced into a situation where this is how they can defend themselves and make a better life. But in turn, they are exploiting and destroying the forest, which has its own externalities. And I think it all comes back to that very beginning when, his village gets attacked and the elders just like go out into the world with eyes unclouded by hate and figure out what the fuck is going on. And I think the fact that the movie pretty much immediately gets to him finding the people who shot the god and destroyed his life and attacked his village. And he goes right up to him and he goes to Lady Eboshi and he's like, "Is this bullet yours?" And she's like, "Yes. Let's talk about it. I'm going to show you why I shot the god." And he doesn't just immediately attack her.
And a movie made by Americans, right? The lady and the Ironworks people would have just been like, the evil, right? But no, that's not how it goes down.
Yeah,
right?
they're doing the best they can, but at the same time, they don't quite understand the ramifications of killing the deer god, which is obviously a metaphor for over time destroying and strip mining the forest.
Yeah. So, one thing I do want to say is that the remake part of it, right, compared to the original. Mm-hmm. The 4K-ness of it, it's like they didn't do some AI garbage, right? Yep. It's an actual 4K upscale. They scanned the 35 millimeter film, right? They did a good job. But did that really increase the enjoyment of the film? For me, no. It could have been. It could have just been. They could have run the 35 millimeter film through, and it would have been the same.
I want to say the second most recent time I saw this, maybe the third most recent, I did see it in a theater, but it was like a shitty old, like scratched up film print. And you know what? Movie's just as good. This movie is
okay. But there were two things, right, that possibly did enhance the enjoyment of the film. One is just the size of IMAX, and this could have been that theater specifically. Again, it was a step above, or it could just be that IMAX theaters are better now than the last time I've been to them.
We didn't even have great seats. We were like kind of far back and off to the side. Didn't matter at all.
Yeah. But the size of the screen really made it stand out, even though it's an animation and there is no actual camera movement. But whenever there was a panning shot or the camera was moving or tracking in as opposed to cutting, it was almost amusement park like in the feeling of movement because of the size of the screen. Especially noticeable during chasing scenes where they're riding the reindeer forwards.
Oh my god, talk about some of the best chase scenes in animated cinema. This movie.
Right. So when the camera actually doesn't move a lot in the film, it's often just showing someone talking and people move around within the frame. So when it does move, it's like the screen was so big you could feel like you're moving a little bit, like you're on a Star Tours Disney ride, those ones. A little bit, not as much, obviously. And it wasn't moving seats or anything like that, right? But just the size of the screen, so that mattered. And two, the sound. I don't know if they remastered the sound
I don't believe they did.
But yeah, I don't know if they did or not. It could have just been the sound system in that theater, or it could have been remastering or whatever. But the power of that sound. Listen, I've seen Joe Hisaishi with an orchestra or a symphony at Radio City Music Hall, and I think I have to say the sound in that theater was more powerful than the live symphony.
Well, I think what helps that of even Miyazaki movies and even of Joe Hisaishi scores, the score to this film is phenomenal. I had the CD of the score 2 years before I saw the movie, and I would listen to it over and over and over again, and so did every weeb I knew in high school.
I mean, I didn't have it that early, but yeah, it's a soundtrack you listen to on purpose for, which is not that common.
Yep. But like the characters are great, the animation is great, and what I love is that nothing is black and white. And this entire movie is just every character, every motivation, everything is subtle and complex at the same time. Like there's no easy answer to anything. There's no the closest thing to a bad guy that you see on screen at any point is Jiko, the emissary of the Emperor. And he's
right,
more
but in the
just
beginning of the movie, he seems like a friendly, helpful guy, and he is.
Yeah, he's just a friendly, helpful little piece of shit.
Yeah.
He's up to no good.
He is up to no good, but he doesn't seem like you don't hate that guy really.
Yeah. Well, up until there's the moment
not
after
the way you hate, not the way that you would hate like the Emperor or some shit.
Well, there's the moment where Lady Eboshi kills the deer god. The metaphorical moment of the old world can't survive, even though they restore the forest by giving the head back. Obviously, the deer god is dead. Like the world is different from this point forward. But in terms of the reality of the world we see, Lady Eboshi shoots the deer god, and the deer god goes apeshit and starts destroying the world. And her response is basically, fuck, maybe that wasn't the best idea. But Jikobo's response is basically, well, time to GTFO, fuck y'all. Like, he does not care at all.
He cared about trying to bring the head to the Emperor because the Emperor thought he could use it to live forever. But as soon as that failed, it's like, well, I failed.
Yep.
And nothing else matters. I just got to survive now.
Yep. But the degree to which he kept trying to get away with the head long after I would have given up in his situation. He persists so hard, which I think implies even more about how dangerous the Emperor is.
Yeah. One thing I should address, because I've seen at least one person complain about this film, is that when the animals are talking.
Oh, right? My God. Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah. When the animals talk in this film, their mouths move and Japanese or English language comes out based on your dub that you're watching. I watched with subtitles in Japanese. But even in Japanese, in the original language, the Japanese language does not match up with the mouth movements of the animals. And this is obviously on purpose.
Yes, it's magical spirit animal talk.
Yes, right. It's because if the animals aren't speaking Japanese, the language of the humans, they're speaking the old language. And for some reason, some people could just understand it, or there's magic that translates it, or who knows.
Yep.
It's whatever. But yeah, the animals are not speaking Japanese or English. And that's why it is that way on purpose. And if it bothers you for some weird reason, that's your problem.
I love the way that is portrayed, though, because like Moro, like the wolves and the boars, the animal characters are great because Miyazaki wrote this thing too. Like this is a Miyazaki. The non-human characters have deeply non-human sensibilities, and that is very well portrayed. And I love how San's dialogue and the way she interacts with people is also very non-human, and that is just portrayed to a degree of subtlety.
Not human. She's in the wolf clan.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines is when Moro is basically telling Ashitaka, like, try to help my daughter out. But what is she calls her? My ugly, beautiful daughter.
But yeah, the mouth moving is actually, I'd say, an elegant technique because I'd say a clumsier film would have been like, they would have stopped and been like, how come you can hear the animals talking? Oh, well, they're using a magical. They would have had to say, right? And this is a way to show and not tell, right? And that is one of the major reasons I've identified that I like movies and don't like television is because television usually does not show and it instead tells. And movies more often will show and not tell and use film and moving pictures to tell stories the way they should. And that's an example of it.
Yep.
There you go.
But yeah, this movie is just like, it is one of my favorite anime movies ever. And despite having seen this movie at least 5 times, I was just wrapped to the end again in the theater. It was partly like I'd seen it for the first time all over again.
It helps that I hadn't seen it in quite a few years and I don't remember the detailed parts, right?
I weirdly remembered a lot more details than I thought I would. Like once I started watching
but
it
is still, you even if you remember them, it's like, it's the kind of memory where if you just tried to like, it's not like some movies where I can just like start playing the movie because I've remembered it.
Like Star Trek or Star Wars Episode 4, I could pretty much just play that in my head in real time.
Yeah, if I had to.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, it's where as soon as you see it, then your brain is like, oh, right. I remember that now. Like I hate that brains work that way, but that's how they work.
Well, like for people of a certain generation, if you see half a second of Simpsons animation, the entire episode appears in your brain instantly.
But if someone told you, yeah, can you tell me what was it was a Simpsons episode with, for example, I don't know.
Bart wants to date his babysitter.
Sure. It's like, what was the very first thing in that episode?
Fuck if I remember. But if you show me
if I show the first frame of that scene, you could probably recite the scene, whatever scene it is.
But yeah, if you somehow have not seen this movie, like it is a priority to go see it. This is one of the greats.
I think you missed your chance to see the IMAX. Maybe it was only like a week or two in the U.S. I don't know about other countries. I hope, Blu-ray sales are dead, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But one would hope, GeekKids brought this out in the U.S. that they would do some kind of release that you could get the 4K stuff at home. You wouldn't have the IMAX screen.
Yeah.
But if your home theater is still good enough, right, it should be, and even if they don't do that, you can just go and watch the regular original edition anytime you want. And if you haven't seen it, what the hell?
Crank up the sound because it's one of those rare movies where the score and the film are both appropriately epic and match each other to a T.
Yeah. It also has, I think every ingredient of a Miyazaki film, right?
Oh, yeah.
Instead of soot sprites that you have in Spirited Away, you have the cute little, white, little Konama guys. I love those guys.
You got Sam. She's definitely the Miyazaki female protagonist.
Yep. You got your crazy monster that's got all sorts of tendrils, so he can do his little watery, liquidy animation bit that he always does.
Yep.
Right? In Ponyo, where he goes really off the wall with that technique. But, he does it right at the start of this one with the boar with all the muck on.
Yep. You've also got like the cast of side characters. Like any character that says more than two words is a full-on Miyazaki archetype, and you can find characters that are like that from his other works.
Yeah, well,
like
I think
like Lady Eboshi's
that's one
bodyguard
Miyazaki
guy.
trope that only appears in some movies, right? So, for example, in Kiki's, they have it. There's a whole town full of these people, right? In Spirited Away, you have the whole bathhouse full of characters, right? That are all creating this sort of, society, family cast, right? Like a stage play. And Mononoke, you have it in the Ironworks, right? All those people there. But in say like Howl's Moving Castle, they don't have the whole big cast of people. Or in Laputa, it's like not really the big cast of people.
Oh, Laputa does have the big cast of people because the pirates keep coming back.
But there's just a few. There's not that many pirates.
True.
It's not like this whole big
it's more like
blob of
Wolfwalkers.
pirates.
There's the small set of pirates, though I think the big pirate reminds me of Gonza from Mononoke. Like there's still the archetype.
Yeah.
But the rest of the pirates, they're like the wolves and Wolfwalkers. They're just like a blob of pirate.
Right. And, Nausicaa, you do have the sort of the villagers, but it's not really to that extent. It's mostly, a smaller group. So in Totoro, also small group, right? There isn't a big cast.
And I guess the final thing I really appreciate about this movie is that the ending is bittersweet and melancholy, and it's not an ending so much as like, well, where do we go from here? And it's rare that a big movie that's popular ends in that manner. A lot of audiences don't like an ending to a movie that is not like, every thread is wrapped up and we have saved the dear God, the end.
Yeah, you would expect the ending to be like, oh, he goes back to his original village. Nope.
Yep.
Or,
Or they fall in love. Like, yes, they may love each other, but they're not just going off happily ever after. She still doesn't forgive the humans, and he's not exactly enthusiastic about the state of the world.
Right. It's like, yeah, there could be, this conflict that the movie focuses on is over, but it's not set into a status quo of perfect stability, right? The future is still murky. Is the Emperor going to be pissed and come back?
Yep.
Probably.
What's going to happen to the people now that the Ironworks is gone?
How's the forest going to be without the, right? the animals there.
And the wolves aren't gone. Like, there are still some wolves and San, and like, it's not like they're just going to roll over and let the humans do whatever they want.
No, but there's a lot less, right? There's a lot less boars, too.
Yep. Well,
A lot less.
Well, the boars made the mistake of letting their eyes remain clouded by hate.
Yeah. That's how boars do.
Yep. I love how even Okotonushi was like, I'm the god of the boars. And Moro's like, yeah, finally, someone who's not stupid I can talk to. And even he's like, yeah, I'm going to go fight and lose anyway, because it's what I do.
Mm-hmm.